Hello, everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and I'm sure someplace else in the fourth dimension it might be all three of those at the same time. But here we are on another week. Hope everybody has had a great one. I've had a very good one. It's been quite quiet, which is nice, especially now that my kids are back at school. That makes all the difference to things being nice and quiet around here. So it's pretty cool. I have the new screen all set up and running. It's been running great all week, and my internet has been running great ever since I got rid of the old screen. So that is a big, big bonus that I'm very happy about. And so over on this screen, I now have the chat, which is great, which means I can, well, I'll pretty much never miss a thing now. And the resolution of this screen is 1080 by 1920, so it's full 1080p HD screen, and it's perfect. Actually, it's going to make doing these shows so much easier for just in a whole bunch of ways, so much easier because I can have the chat over on this screen, and it's just totally legible, totally readable. Whereas on the other screen, the resolution was really poor. And so it was really hard to read the chat. And then I kept on having to like switch screens and stuff. You know, I had to minimize Chrome and then open up Studio One if I wanted to do a demo in Studio One. And then, of course, I couldn't see the chat. So if you guys were not seeing the screen properly, I would never know. And I would just carry on doing whatever I'm doing and would just never know it. So it's very cool that I now have the chat over on the other screen, so I can see exactly what's going on, and it's very, very readable. It's great, loving it. Speaking of the chat, Ken Moss was the first in the door. He was a full nearly 20 minutes before showtime, and he is one of my mods, as is Mike Neighbor, who goes by the name of Drummer Mike. He is my other mod. I think I only have two. Yeah, I think I only have to. I don't really need that many, to be honest. So we have John Lake here as well. Kyle Jedruziak is here. Bob Studios, not seen you for a while. Good to have you back, my friend. And he is here. And who else do we have? Tony Stringer is here as well. And Photography Light and Magic, of course, is here. And Bobby Booth, no show is complete without Bobby. He's here. And Jesse Martinez says, hey, hey, hey. Good to have you back. Dwayne is here as well. And I think that's it so far. We have 12 people here, so it's a little bit low on numbers. But hopefully as the show goes on, people will come in. We're only 5 minutes in, so hopefully over the course of the next couple of minutes, we'll have people piling in. And hopefully, we should have a good show. Excuse me. So yeah, I hope everybody's week has been good. John is asking, what is the make of the screen? It is a Lenovo ThinkVision. And I think it's 20 inches wide, which is nice. And it fits perfectly on there. Now, as a result, you're probably thinking, hey, hang on a minute. I'm noticing that the mic is at a different angle. Yeah, you're right. It's not a reverse angle shot. And I know some people have said, hey, isn't that a reverse angle shot? No, it's not. I actually had to move the mic over to the other side to accommodate the dimensions of the new screen because I couldn't get, because basically monitors are big nowadays. Nobody has small monitors anymore. So it was practically impossible to get like a little 17-inch, which is what I had before. It was practically impossible to get one that's that small anymore. So I had to get one that was as small as I could get. And so I ended up with like 20-inch monitor. It is what it is. Everybody has big monitors nowadays. I mean, I saw... Wait. I forgot to turn notifications off. I knew there was going to be something that I would forget to do. But yeah, so one of the things these days is that everybody has big monitors like 40 inches, 55 inches. I saw if you go to the Studio One, I think it's called the Photos group, and you can post pictures of your studio. I've posted a couple of updated pictures of my studio just recently over there. There are some terrific looking studios over there, so go check those out. But yeah, there was one guy there who had a 55-inch monitor, and then there's folks that have like big curved monitors. And one of those would be awesome, but I just don't have the space for such things. And I know that eventually I'm going to have to change something about my studio eventually because, 22-inch, 24-inch screens are considered small now. My main screen, this one here, which is in front of me, is 24-inch. And this little guy over here, as I say, is like 21 inch, something like that. So, that's considered small nowadays, which is just crazy. Considering I can remember back when I first started getting into using computers for recording, which would be like 1989, and screens were like that. They were barely the size of your head, and they weighed a ton. I remember that. But yeah, so that's what I now have, and as I say, the quality of the picture is amazing. It really is. Let's see. What else we got going on? Oh dear, that's just asking me to do that again. I'm not going to do that now. Let's see. A rowdy bunch most of the time, says Kyle. Yeah, you guys are a rowdy bunch most of the time. Just Bob is here. Here's my other mods. Sorry, I have 3 mods. Of course I do. I have Ken, I have Just Bob, and I have Mike. Those are my 3. I don't really need any more than that, which is pretty cool. So let's see what other chat is going on. Bob Studios says Lenovo is kicking these days. Yeah, they're a pretty good make. And they make tablets as well, as Bob points out. And they work pretty well. Yeah, I guess that's an Android tablet or a Windows tablet, I guess. So let's see. Bobby says I have a Lenovo computer with an AOC monitor. Cool. All right, so Kyle has my at Jonny Lipsham Studios so that it's nice and red, so that I can see that it's a question for the show, which is great. So if you want to ask a question and you don't want me to miss it, rather than just like posting general chat and it's a particular question that you want me to answer as part of the show, then just type at Jonny Lipsham Studios and then ask your question. That way, it's my name is in red and I know that that's a question. He says, an actual question. Cool. He says, my compression settings are causing the music to pump. I have an HP high-pass filter, but still happening. What should I change to fix it? That is probably to do with the attack and release settings that you have on your... I'm presuming that you're talking about your mix bus compressor. And it may well be that for a start, you are just doing too much compression on your mix bus compressor. But even with just a little bit of compression, if the attack time is too fast, then you can definitely get some pumping going on. Another thing that can be causing it is the compressor, particularly if it's a mix bus compressor, too much low end going through it. Now, some mix bus compressors, they have like a little filter, sidechain filter built into them. And you can actually turn that up so you can roll off the low end. And what that does, it means is that the low end will pass through the compressor without triggering it. And everything else above that value will go through the compressor. And the compressor will be triggered by all of that other information. But low end will pass through without being compressed. That is certainly something else you can do, particularly if you're finding that the low end is just too squished. Like maybe you have a kick drum that is overexciting the mix bus compressor and it's causing it to duck too much. You can certainly do that. Now, we can go take a look in Studio One at this very idea. So why don't we do that? I need to go over to here. So we are in Studio One, and I've got this little demo thing that I put together. Actually, I'll tell you a little story about this little demo, and then I'll get to your question. This little demo I actually put together because I was testing an issue when working at Presonus in tech support, and I basically just dragged in a bunch of completely random loops. So all it was, just random loops. I just dragged them in. So if I mute everything that I added subsequently and just leave you with the 3 loops that I originally just dragged in to test a particular issue, and have a listen to what just kind of came together, just totally unplanned, just like random loops just dragged in. And it's pretty darn cool. It sounds kind of a little bit Latin and a little bit funky. And I kind of liked it, so I added a little bit of bass to it. And then once I'd added some bass to it, I added some piano. And then I kind of thought it sounds a little bit empty in the middle of the tune, so I then added a little bit of Fender Rhodes. All right, enough of that. So yeah, this little tune resulted from me just testing an issue and just messing about and with these percussion loops, and then I just started adding stuff, and it's kind of developed into the start of something. I don't know where it's going to go yet, but it's kind of going somewhere. So Kyle says here, I verified that I was using the FET compressor. Okay, on the FAT channel, I'm presuming you are using our good friend the FAT channel. In which case, let's slam this in here. Let's go to the compressor and let's go for the FET. Now, the thing with the FET compressor is it's aggressive. And probably, to my mind, not the best option for mixed bus compression because it is too aggressive. I wouldn't use this if I was going to do any mixed bus compression, to be honest, because it's fast. It is super duper fast. Even if you set it at its slowest attack time, it is still too fast for compressing your overall mix. So let's run this tune, and let's see what we can do with this, and I'll show you what I mean by it's a little too fast. So let's pull that back a bit. There we go. Now we got some action going on. Now, when you do mix bus compression, you barely want to be kissing the needle. You want to just be moving it just a little bit, just to kind of glue the whole thing together. So really, that's all you want to be doing. You don't want to be doing like 4 or 5 or 6 dB of compression, especially with a FET compressor, because it's just too darn fast. All right, so we've got this set to 0.02 milliseconds. So let's pull that all the way over to the other side, and let's see what that sounds like. So you can see that, even at its slowest setting, it's way too fast. So I would not recommend using the FET, to be honest, for mix bus compression. I would use something a little bit different. What would I maybe go for? I would maybe go for something like this guy here. You could certainly use this. This works pretty nicely, this Brit comp. But you can see how most of the information here, the compressor is being mostly excited by the upright bass in particular. So I would maybe, if it's being overstimulated, then maybe you could just use this guy and roll this up so that it's, the low end is passing through. Watch what happens. See, it's hardly moving now. So that's kind of what I would do. Certainly with mix bus compression, you really don't want to be moving the needle very, very much. There are some people that like to, and of course it's going to be program dependent. So if you're working in a much heavier genre than this, then maybe, yeah, you want to compress a little bit more. Like if you're working in, I don't know, heavy metal or speed death metal or something like that, then yeah, you probably want to compress a little bit more than this. I'm, for the most part, I'm working in jazz, I'm working in acoustic music, I'm working in folk, and a little bit of funk. And I like to hardly touch the needle at all. I just like it to move no more than like 1.5, 2 dB tops would be the amount of compression I would be looking for personally, for me. And for the music that I work in. So I hope that was helpful. Let's see. Bob says, I'm in a quandary thinking of a PCI card direct in from an analog mixer. The goal is 0 latency all round. That is a great question, and the answer to which would be, I don't know. I have not used a PCIe card for an audio interface in years. I think way back in 2003 was the last time I used such a thing, and it worked pretty well. You know, it can work. If you've got a Thunderbolt port on your computer, then certainly consider something like the Quantum 2626, or the original Quantum would be another really good option if you want near zero latency. The other thing to consider is that in a lot of cases, you can monitor direct through the interface, and that way you are effectively in zero latency land. For example, if you have a Series 3 mixer or one of the newer ones, the Studio Live 32SC, for example, then an option there would be to just monitor direct off the board. Or, you know, if you've got like the Studio 1824C, which is what I have, you can just monitor direct through the interface. And therefore, you are working when you are recording in complete zero latency. Because you're only ever hearing the direct sound. You're not ever hearing the sound of your recording going into Studio One and then coming back out again, which is where the latency can come into play. Now, in the case of the 1824, it's actually only about 4.5, 5 milliseconds of latency on this computer. So it's pretty fast. And really, 5-6 milliseconds of latency is not really going to bother me. It certainly doesn't make it impossible to record. It doesn't make it, you know, impossible to play along to any recording either. Whether that's a virtual instrument or real instrument, you know, there's practically no noticeable or observable delay. And of course, you can change your device block size settings so that you know, that latency is reduced as much as your computer will allow it to be reduced. That's another option. You know, you can just increase that device block size setting and, you know, your latency can go right down. But it does mean that your computer is having to work harder because it's having to process the information faster. So, you know, it's a little bit swings and roundabouts. USB versus Thunderbolt versus, you know, all the other options that there are, you know, optical or SPDIF or something like that, you know. It's a case of kind of going with what you think is going to work best for your computer and the kind of latency values that you think you can tolerate the best. For me, anything between 0 and 7 or 8 or 9 milliseconds is really not going to be a problem. I know that there are some people that are extremely sensitive to such things, and they'll be like, no, I cannot handle 10 milliseconds of latency. And you just have to work with that. And if that means you have to make your computer work a little bit harder whilst you're recording, then do it. And then back it off when you're mixing. So that would be an answer to that question. Let's see. Mika says, "Hey Mika, good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Hope your daughter is doing okay. I know that she has been in considerably ill health, and yeah, thinking of you and your family for sure." Mika says, "Nice chord contrast between the piano and the Rhodes." Yeah, I kind of wanted the piano to be kind of a little bit more kind of mid-rangey, low mid-rangey, kind of around that kind of area of the piano, and then to have the Rhodes providing a little bit of sparkle with the phaser and the delay, you know. Kind of sounds nice that way. Let's see. Mika says, "You'll never achieve 0. A couple of milliseconds will always be present." Yeah, it kind of depends upon the speed of your computer. Really, how fast can your computer process raw, unadulterated audio data? In and out. That's really the question. Now, Personas did put out a video a little while back where they daisy-chained 2 quantums together, and they managed to achieve 0.1, I think it was, milliseconds of latency. So it's less than 1 millisecond of latency. And I imagine they did that on a reasonably powerful machine in order to be able to achieve that particular value. But yeah, absolute dead 0.0 latency is probably not possible. There's always going to be some delay because the computer has to receive your audio, process it, and churn it back out so you can hear it. So there's always going to be, you know, it's like the difference between, you know, saying to somebody who, you know, has an IQ, let's say, of 170 or something, and you give them a very simple math problem to solve, and the delay between you saying, here's the problem, and they provide the answer. It's the same kind of principle. If you've got somebody very, very clever, it's going to take them very short time to solve that particular math equation. However, if you've got someone that isn't quite so fast at solving math equations, it'll take them a little longer, but surely they will arrive at probably the correct answer. It'll just take them a little bit longer. In my case, I have the longest latency in math history, because it will take me a very long time to solve a very basic equation, because I'm not a numbers guy in the slightest. I'm a word person and an audio person. I'm not a numbers guy at all. Numbers just don't excite me. Sound excites me and words excite me. That's pretty much where I am. Let's see. Mika says, important to hit the FET and the LA2A with reasonable levels. Yep. Minus 18 to minus 12. Yes, absolutely. Mika says, splitter and frequency mode is more effective than using HeyPay. Yeah, it probably is. I would agree with that. Mike is here. Hey, Mike. You were just finishing up your dinner, so that's cool. I'm glad you're here. See what else do we have in the chat? Well, hey, it just jumped. Mika says, even if the key filter is set higher than the bass frequencies, the bass is still being compressed by the mid-range triggering of the compressor. Correct. The splitter in frequency mode eliminates this issue. Yeah, it most certainly does. I was just demonstrating one way in which you can roll off at least some of the more troublesome bass frequencies that can be overstimulating your compressor, for sure. But yeah, you're absolutely right. If you want to completely eliminate the low end from your mixed bus compression, you can probably do that better with a splitter, for sure. We got 23 people here, which is freaking awesome. Just Bob says, odd factoid. I just found out that the Doors had to pay the Kinks for copyright infringement for Hello, I Love You because it resembles the Kinks all day and all the night. Never noticed until now. Well, I did not know that. Mika says, USB's data stream is optocoupled. Conversion is fast, but will always take microseconds. Yes, for sure. But yes. I think that's as much math as I can cope with, to be honest, today. So, so there we go. I hope that was helpful for you guys. So yeah, 23 people here, which is pretty good. I think our best yet, was nearly 40, I think we had. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Bob Studio says, yeah, around 100 for roll-off. Yeah. I mean, I have changed my position on high-pass filtering quite a bit over the years. I think fairly early on, maybe almost as recently as 7 or 8 years ago, I would have said high-pass everything up to 100, apart from a bass instrument and the kick drum. Nowadays, I don't subscribe to that point of view, particularly. Nowadays, I would say High-pass filtering is great. There is nothing wrong with high-pass filtering. It is a great way of clearing out the low end so you're making space for the bass instruments and the kick drum, for sure. But having a specific value, I think, is not a helpful idea. And the reason for that, I think, is because you can end up with having really thin-sounding mixes. And in particular, when that mix is translated onto something that has smaller speakers, they can end up sounding super papery and super thin. And it's not going to sound good. It's not going to sound good. So nowadays, I would say high pass up to the point where kind of you're at that point where the low end is cleared up. But I would not subscribe to a particular value. I'm not going to say do it only at 80 or do it only at 100 or do it only at 70. I think it's wherever it is for that particular song. You've got to use your ears, you've got to use your judgment, and you've got to use your sense of taste as well. And also, the style of the music should inform how much low end should be present in any given particular audio source. So yeah, I've totally kind of changed my position. I used to high pass everything up to 100. It's just like the first thing I did. Bunch of EQs. High pass, high pass, high pass. High passing is great. There's nothing wrong with it. And, my good friend Warren Hewitt loves to high pass. And I love to high pass as well. I think it's an important thing to be able to do. And it's an important way to create clarity in your mixes so that they are, not so bottom heavy and not so muddy. But you've got to be careful about how you do it. And, not having a particular fixed value is a good thing. Michael Johnson asks, who uses external mastering through the door? That I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Do you mean kind of not using the project page and using a completely different software for mastering your songs that you have mixed in Studio One? Or do you mean you don't master your own stuff? You send that off to someone else? For my own stuff, my own songs, I tend to do all the mixing and mastering. So I tend to do everything for my music myself. But for clients' work, if I'm mixing a client's song, then I will be sending that off to a mastering engineer that the client has employed to do that particular stage of the production the production process. So my job in that particular case is strictly just to mix and to provide the best mix I possibly can to the mastering engineers, so the mastering engineers' focus entirely is on sweetening and providing that final veneer and polish, and making his or her life as easy as possible. That's kind of my focus for client work, unless the client has actually employed me to master, in which case, if they've employed me as their producer and their mix engineer and their mastering engineer, then yes, I will do all of that together if that's what they've asked me to do. But for the most part, no. For the most part, for client work, I send that off. And I will work pretty closely with mastering engineers when I'm working for other clients. I will say, hey, kind of what would you like me to deliver to you? Are you okay with some mix bus processing? Because I tend to mix top down, so I tend to start with mix bus processing and then go down the line. And when they understand that, they're like, yeah, that's fine. If you're using a limiter to send your draft mixes to your client, just make sure that you take that off before you send that out to me. And that usually works pretty great. And then there may be a little bit of toing and froing between the two, between me and the mastering engineer, but Hopefully, not a lot. But, you know, I have to do what works. Mike Johnson says, I high pass, but listen to each track, both solo and in context, to make the decision. That's a great suggestion. Great suggestion. But yeah, that's cool. John Lake says, I usually pass at the 20-yard line. That's hilarious. Diego is here. Hello, Diego. How are you? Good to see you. Says, do Audiobox and Studio Series interfaces have different preamps? That is a terrific question. And as far as I know, they are similar preamps. They're not the same, they are similar. The ones that are in the Audiobox are Xmax preamps. And the studio ones, that's a good question. You got me going to kind of double check so that I make sure that I have this right. So let's see, Studio Series. Let's go and look at the 1824. You're not seeing this yet. Don't worry, you will do. Is that what I want to look at? Or is it this? Okay. All right, so this is the feature page for the 1824. And you can see there how many inputs and outputs you can have. 2 mic instrument lines with Xmax Class A mic preamps. And those are the ones that are on the front. And then the ones that are on the back, 6 mic line inputs with Xmax Class A preamps. So the ones that are on the Audiobox are a different class of Xmax pre. I think they are Class L, but I'm not 100% sure. So we can go and double check that. We can go back to products and we can go to audio interfaces. Let's go to Audiobox USB. Let's look at the USB 96 and features. And let's see what it says here, just to be absolutely double sure. 2 combo mic instrument inputs. Yeah, it doesn't actually really specifically state exactly whether they're Xmax or not, but I'm pretty sure they are Xmax Ls. But I will need to ask, and I can certainly do that tomorrow. I can certainly ask about that tomorrow and get a more detailed response for you on that subject. So yeah, sorry I couldn't give you a very specific answer, but I'm pretty sure that they are Xmax on the Audiobox as well, but I think they're just different Xmaxes. But that was a really good question. Lorenz is here. Hello, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. And Just Bob says, sidechaining, is it instrument to instrument or vocals to instruments or all? Is it way to stop fighting for space? If not done right, will it ruin your mix? If not done right, it will definitely ruin your mix. But here's the thing with sidechain compression. Sidechain compression can be used for a variety of different things. It depends on what your goal is and the style of music that you're working in. Now, when it comes to things like jazz and folk and acoustic music, I hardly will use any sidechain. I might, in a jazz context, I might sidechain the kick drum to the bass. So I'm ducking the kick drum a little bit behind the bass because the bass is the one that lays down the law in a jazz context, not the kick drum. Kick drum is there purely for occasional what we call bomb dropping, which is where you give the bass drum a hefty thud on occasion to complement what you're doing on the snare drum. And it's not really there. It's not really a central thing. It's not a central role that it plays. But what in a swing jazz context, the kick drum is played very, very lightly. We call it feathering, where you're just basically just tapping the beater, so that the beater is just tapping the head of the bass drum on every quarter note. And of course, the upright bass will be playing quarter notes walking. And so I will duck the kick drum behind the bass just a tiny little bit, just to kind of tuck it underneath the bass, because I want the bass to be a little bit more up front than the kick drum in that particular setting. In a more kind of rock, pop, funk setting, the kick drum needs to have a little bit more impact. So I will reverse that, and I will have the bass guitar duck behind the kick drum. So the kick drum is more forward. But the other thing I can do, and I think I demoed this the other week, is you can use sidechain compression to duck things like delays and reverbs on a lead vocal, so that when the lead vocal is singing, the delay is out of the way, and then you get the tail come forward when the vocal stops, of the reverb or the delay, whichever one it is. And that is certainly a technique that I use quite a lot. That's one way that I use sidechain compression pretty extensively. But yeah, you can sidechain anything to anything, depending upon your use case. It is phenomenally useful technique. And actually in rock music and in pop and in more, kind of contemporary R&B, you would use sidechains a lot. You'd sidechain different things to different things in order to get them to, some things to sit further back and some elements to sit further forward. So for example, to help your vocals stay up front at all times, for as much as you would also compress the vocal in series, and in parallel as well, one other thing you can do is you can duck the entire band behind the vocals, so that every time the vocal sings, the entire band is tucked back by a couple of dB. Not a lot, just a couple of dB, just so that the vocal stays on top all the time. And then, when the vocal is not singing, everything comes, the instrumentation comes forward a little bit. Comes back up front a little bit more. Other scenarios that I can think of, if, like, for example, you're at the end of your song and you've got like an electric guitar solo to play out to the fade of the song, but you've also got vocal ad-libs, you can use sidechain compression to duck those two things so that they are out of the way of each other. And you can use volume automation to do that as well. So there's a few different examples there of what you can do with sidechain compression. It is phenomenally useful technique, and you can apply it in so many incredible creative ways. Ducking reverbs, ducking delays, ducking anything that you need to create some space in your mix. But that is a terrific question. I like it. And yes, if not done right, you can certainly ruin your mix, because you can certainly end up with something being pushed back too hard, too aggressively, and then it becomes very noticeable. And actually in certain genres, you want that. Like in EDM, perhaps you want everything to duck out of the way of the kick drum, because that kick drum sound is so important to EDM. It's so important. You want that slamming, almost more important than whatever the lead instrument is. And so you can sidechain everything to that kick drum. And in particular, I suppose the more stereotypical way in which sidechain compression would be used in EDM is to duck the bass sound behind the kick drum, so you get that kind of pumping, throbbing kind of effect with bass sound. And certainly with, keyboard pads, synthy pad sounds, you can have that pumping, throbbing effect. And so you're using sidechain compression to create momentum and movement within the music and a sense of pulse. So you're really emphasizing and exaggerating the pulse of the music. And you're increasing the centrality of the role of the kick drum in doing that. So yeah, sidechain compression is incredibly powerful. Just be careful how you use it. Bob C says, "Oh Lord, I so try to not use limiters." There's nothing wrong with limiting. Limiting is great, actually. And sometimes actually you can use a limiter on a vocal track. You know, if you're wanting a particular very compressed vocal sound, then a limiter can certainly do that for you, because it's brick wall. It'll stop the vocal going over a certain threshold. And so you can really, you know, if you need a really ultra aggressive vocal sound, a limiter can be what you need to achieve that. So yeah, limiting is a good thing. Kyle is out of here. Good night, Kyle. Thanks for coming. Bob Studio says, yeah, players know how to play ahead or drag in real situations without the tricks. Yes, they do. However, when you're using something like sidechain compression in a mixing context, you're not necessarily trying to fix imperfections in the playing performance. For the most part, you're using sidechain compression to create space and for each of the elements of your mix. You're not necessarily trying to fix a performance or a timing issue. Sometimes you are, but for the most part, you're not. You're not using sidechain compression to fix timing. You're using sidechain compression to create space and create sense of momentum in music. It's a different thing. And, you know, there is a degree to which you can achieve that with good, incredibly accurate sense of time and from your musicians. For sure you can, and for sure you should ask that of your musicians if they are capable of it. Get them to certainly do that. But as it relates to a kick drum and a bass instrument in a pop context, you kind of want the kick drum to be further up front than the bass guitar, and the way you would achieve that is to use the kick drum to provide the attack for you, and the bass instrument, if it's a like a Fender P bass, or it's a Yamaha bass or something like that, whatever bass it happens to be, you use that to create the body of the low end, and have the kick drum to create the strong transient, and then the bass guitar to fill out the body of that. And that is a technique that you can't achieve by performance alone. That is something you achieve with mixing. But yeah, that's a good point though. Just Bob says, so you need to understand which instrument you're trying to accentuate. To accentuate instrument needs to apply the sidechain. The application is where I'm confused. Yeah, I totally understand why you're confused. And as I say, it depends upon the music that you're working with. So my opinion, the way I learned how to do sidechain compression and to make it effective was by listening to good mixes in the particular style that I'm working in. So if I'm working on an EDM track, and I did an EDM record for a guy 2 or 3 years ago, and EDM's not really my strong suit, never really has been. However, in this particular case, what I needed to do was I needed to achieve a particular sound that my EDM crazy client was into. I mean, he was into kind of, what he was trying to do was fuse EDM with classic 70s disco and funk. That was kind of his thing. Now the 70s disco thing I get. The funk thing I get. I've lived with that kind of style of music for a long time. So I understand how that works. The EDM elements, I have maybe a lot less understanding of, and certainly did back then. So what did I do? I went and bought as much EDM listening material as I could. And my way of preparing for this particular record was to listen to an awful lot of Pete Tong and DJs like that, and Deadmau5. I listened to a lot of Deadmau5 and stuff like that, and just get my head around how these effects are created. And then I watched tutorials. You know, I went on YouTube and I watched tutorials on mixing EDM and how you use sidechain compression to create some of these really creative effects with synths, you know, throbbing and pumping synths and pumping bass sounds and all of that. So I watched a bunch of tutorials on the subject. So yeah, referencing is really, really important. If particularly if you're wanting to learn how to apply sidechain compression, I do have a couple of videos on it on my channel. You could certainly go and take a look at those. I think it's part of my compression series that I put up a while back. Actually, if you have been to my website and you've hit the red button on the homepage of my website, I'm pretty sure it's part of my new compression series. So you could certainly, if you've not done that, go and do that. Hit that red button, get your free compression course, and then check out, there's a section there on sidechain compression. And certainly on the channel here, I've got some stuff on sidechain compression there. But yeah, it is about a little bit of listening to music mixed in that particular style, using those as a reference, and particularly going, hey, I'm using this reference track not to kind of reference my overall mix, but I want to listen to how they've applied sidechain compression to duck certain things behind certain other things, and I want to apply that to my mix. So you're kind of using the reference track to help you guide that, creating that sound. So if it is ducking the band behind the vocal, for example, the way you do that is you have a bus for your band. You put the compressor on the band bus, and then you set the sidechain input as the vocal. And then that way, what is happening is every time the vocal is happening, the band is being compressed, but not the vocal. It's just the vocal is the trigger to compress the band. And then that way, every time the vocalist is singing, the band is being ducked by a small amount. And the idea is you want to make that subtle in a rock and pop context. You want to make that subtle. You don't want the band to the band to suddenly disappear every time the singer sings. You want the band to just kind of tuck just a tiny bit underneath. And so you make it subtle. And then it's a case of, setting the attack and the release for the compressor to taste, so that you make sure that it's musical and there's no pumping. You don't want pumping in that context. In an EDM context, have lots of fun with pumping, because that is part of the genre. In other musical contexts, you don't want pumping. You want it to be transparent as you can make it. So yeah, I hope that helps. I hope that helps. Bob says, duck, so many ways to do it. Yes, absolutely. And this is my favorite one. When I used to play county cricket, which is fairly high level cricket. It's not international level, but it's kind of like the level below that. When I played county cricket, and you have the guy charging in and bowling a cricket ball at your head at like between 80 and 90 miles an hour. Yeah, you learn to duck pretty efficiently. So, Just Bob, I hope that makes sense. I need to look up Deadmau5. Yeah, it's Deadmau5 with the 5 instead of the S. And by the way, Deadmau5 uses a Persona Series 3 mixer to do his shows. In case you didn't realize that. He does. So there you go. So Bob, I hope that helps you, buddy. And I hope that helps provide a little bit of understanding. And then go ahead, just try it out. If, for example, try it out on a vocal with a delay. Crank up the delay so that the delay is ridiculous and almost swamps the vocal. Put the compressor on the delay effects channel, and then set the sidechain key, the input, as the vocal. And then every time the vocal performs, the vocal does its thing. You then go and set the settings so that every time the vocal makes a sound, that delay gets slammed with compression, like 15, 20 dB. Try it. And then it's a case of setting the release time so that when the vocal stops, you get the tail of the effect of the delay or the reverb. And I think the last time we covered this, I actually did a demonstration where we took a vocal and we ducked the delay out of the way. So yeah, certainly have a look at that, and maybe I will do another video on the subject and show a couple of different applications of sidechain compression. Maybe I need to update those videos. Who knows? So we're coming towards the end of the show, and I'm going to have a swig of tea. And if you've got a question, I'll take maybe one, maybe two more. Dwayne says, I'm making a note to self to experiment with the sidechain on effects pointing to vocals on my Series 3 rack mixer. Cool. That would be a good application. That would be a very good application of that. So, anyone else have any other questions? But there have been some really great questions. I was actually beginning to wonder, hey, what should I talk about tonight? But you guys have provided me with a wealth of material talking about sidechain compression and preamps of interfaces and, direct versus, direct hardware monitoring versus software monitoring. And that's the other thing to remember, actually, if you're dealing with latency, is that in Studio One we have two monitoring paths. So the audio can be split into two particular monitoring paths, which means you can, even on a relatively slow machine, it can process your playback and your recording at two different monitoring paths, which means you can have low latency for recording and then not worry about the latency settings for playback, which is really, really fantastic innovation. In Studio One, we brought that in Studio One 3, I think it was 3.5, in fact, and it's just so easy. And there are two different ways you can do it. You can either have software, which is where you have the green Z on the master bus, or you can have the hardware monitoring path, which is where you have the blue Z and things like the Studio 192, the 1824C, you can have that as an option. And I use that from time to time. The only issue with it is that sometimes it can shut off other audio sources, and you don't necessarily want that. Like if I'm making a YouTube video and I put in the blue hardware monitor, I have to make some adjustments to how I record my voiceover track in order to do that. It becomes a little bit funky for video making, but for most use cases, the hardware latency monitoring path, low latency monitoring path is extremely good. It's very, very fast. It's only like a couple of milliseconds. It's nothing major. Let's see. Just Bob says, thank you for all you do. Much love. Thank you very much, mate. I really appreciate that. That is a very kind thing to say. Thank you. So Ken says, if you are sidechaining bass and kick, can you parallel compress as well? Absolutely you can. You can absolutely do that. And I do that regularly. Because you have the parallel compression set as an ascend, a pre-fade ascend from your send section. And so it's not really going to affect your sidechain compression because that's done via a key input into another compressor. So it's not going to affect your parallel compression settings at all, because they're kind of different paths altogether. So Mika says, sidechaining is what is feeding the compressor. Parallel processing is one way to apply it. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That would be a great answer there. Jonny says, next Sunday, maybe we can talk rubber chicken. Speaking of next Sunday, if you have a particular subject you would like me to cover for next Sunday's show, or you have a burning question that you would like me to start off with, to start the show with your burning question, email me, Jonny at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, and title your subject for your email. Just put Sunday Night Live or next Sunday Night Live show. And then in the body of your text, put your question or your subject that you would like me to cover. And then that gives me a little bit of time to kind of research, look at your question and figure out the best way to tackle it. And then on Sunday, your question will be the one that I start with. So if I have 5 emails from you guys right now, or over the course of this week before next Sunday's show, then those 5 questions will be the first ones that we deal with. And we'll take it from there. I would much prefer this show if it was your questions than it is me kind of trying to figure out what you guys would like. So, yeah, I hope that helps. And it would certainly help me if you guys send me emails of subjects that you would like me to cover. Even if you've got like 4 or 5 subjects that you'd like me to cover, that's great, because that means we've got the next 5 shows mapped out. Because I can cover each one of those subjects over the, 4 or 5 weeks. And that way, everybody knows what is coming next for next week's show. So, yeah, please do that. That would be a great help to me. Mika says, most excellent discussions tonight. All the best to you and your family. Thank you very much, mate. I appreciate it. Back to work tomorrow morning. And the kids will be out at school, so it'll be nice and quiet around here. Looking forward to that. So thanks, everybody, for all of your great questions. And I will see you all on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified over on Jonny Gibe's YouTube channel, Home Studio Trainer. And that'll be 6 p.m. Central. Same time, slightly different place. But otherwise, I will see you then. Good night, everybody.